Well, hello all. My name is Danae Valentina. I'm a writer, a researcher. I'm originally from Chile, and I'm based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. First, I'd like to let you know a little bit about my background, so you know where I'm coming from. Well, I'm a feminist writer. I was born in Chile, and in 2012, I moved to the UK to study at the University of Bristol. And now I live in Rotterdam, where I'm a postgraduate student in literary studies. The topics of my research are posthumanist literature, altered states of mind, and the cyberspace. But to study all this stuff, I needed money to afford this kind of elitist education. So that's why I've been working since I was very young to get all sorts of gigs and scholarships. And I've always been around technology, around the internet. I started as a web developer in Santiago, and then as a project manager in several advocacy organizations of digital rights in Chile and in Brazil. After that, I joined the Rise Up Collective. I don't know if you know it. It's a place where we provide secure communication channels, such as encrypted email, encrypted file sharing, and we're mostly oriented to activists all over the world. This journey hasn't been easy, but I think that after all these years, I've learned a thing or two about the internet. And at some point, I became progressively more interested in its artistic, literary possibilities, and about how the internet can become a source for posthumanist thinking, rather than this boring, completely surveilled space that we feel the web is today. So in 2018, I joined the Mozilla Foundation as an Open Web Fellow to study non-Western, non-conforming approaches to digital technologies. And from that experience emerged the Digital Witchcraft project, which right now is an organization registered in the Netherlands under the name of the Digital Witchcraft Institute. And well, I'm extremely happy to be here with you all to present this experience of magic and technology. I'm super grateful that you invited me to this beautiful, beautiful place. And I know this might not be the usual kind of topic you see in these tech conferences, especially because my outputs involved techniques from humanities and social sciences, such as interviews, fieldwork, critical discourse analysis. So I would like to invite you to look at this presentation with an artistic literary lens, rather than something that's coming strictly from the realm of computer science. So that's my huge disclaimer. Let's start. Well, Digital Witchcraft was a started as a one-year artistic research project with a strong connection to activism and notions of non-traditional modes of thinking. And everything started with this quote by Peter Sloterdijk. He's a very famous theorist on aesthetics. Magic is the mother of technology. This means that every technological advance started as an idea that seemed like magic in the first place, like something supernatural. And I feel it's kind of easy to confirm this premise for our generation, since we have experienced advance in relation to digital technologies in a very fast way. For example, picture your 10-year-old self speaking to Siri every morning to ask about the weather. That's what I do almost every morning. After living in the UK, you became kind of obsessed with the weather. So every morning I'm like, hey Siri, what's the weather today? And Siri replies, and I take my decisions for the day according to Siri's answer. My younger self will have freaked out seeing that kind of thing, witnessing that kind of sorcery. And I took this quote, magic is the mother of technology, very seriously, thought a lot about it, and started to realize that the supernatural and the mystical references are all over digital technologies. Issues such as magical references in software releases. The other day, someone told me that there's a Linux distribution called Sorcerer. Also, ritualistic software exchange, I don't know, a maker space, a pirating party, ideas of techno-shamanism. There's stuff like that all over digital technologies. So, with the support of the Mozilla Foundation, I traveled the world to see examples of this magic and technology intersection and to see if those cases could tell us new insights for the technologies of the future. Also, that's the address of my project, digitalwitchcraft.org. Yeah, so for this presentation, I selected the following cases. This one was my first exploration to this topic. It's about hackers and shamans, as you see in the slide. This was a comparative analysis between the figure of the hacker and the shaman. And I studied two main texts, the book Shamanism by Mircea Eliade. He's one of the most famous scholars on religious studies. And Coding Freedom, that's an ethnography on hacker communities written by Biela Coleman. Through this study, I found several similarities between the two groups. To name a few, there's the use of masks by shamans. Well, the relation to death was something that I found very, it was very coherent between the two communities, the shamans and the hackers. The first paragraph is a description on how shamans face death. They believe that you need to confront death in order to come back stronger and with the answers you were looking for. And after that is this paragraph of a hacker describing a Linux installation as a confrontation to death. He calls that a larval stage of hacking and describes the issues like how he neglects activities such as food, sleep, personal hygiene. And it felt very near-death experience in order to return with the knowledge you were aspiring to. And this thing is a video I did. I presented this on the Hope Conference in New York City, Hackers on Planet Earth. And this is an overlap of a shamanic ritual and a hacking conference. The rituals are very important to both communities. Maybe we can take a look at this. Maybe you can picture yourselves to work with computers as some sort of shamans, maybe. I don't know, I always feel like the sound of the drum and the sound of the typing in our keywords are kind of enactors of this meditation experience, this repetition. Well, this is probably one of the topics I've developed the most, but I also have other case studies. This, for example, is something I always highlight. It's about a research trip I did at Havana, Cuba. I started street networks in Cuba there because of the US embargo, among other reasons. The access to internet is very slow and very limited. So the government and many autonomous providers build Wi-Fi networks in selected spots of the city so people can connect. And I was able to connect the situation with Santeria practices. In Santeria, this religion they have in Cuba, obfuscation is at the center. It's a syncretic religion because it has to disguise Yoruba beliefs with Christian imaginary. And I realized that although Cuba is seen as an unconnected nation, they are very resourceful, and their computer scientists have been able to circumvent all the political limitations to connectivity, just like Santeria. In the picture, there's a woman at midnight in Havana, connected to a street network. That's a weird thing to see in Latin America. You cannot go to the square at midnight with your cell phone. You'll get robbed, but you can do that in Cuba. And you see like these small rituals at night with all these blue hues in people's faces. I found it very ritualistic too. This is certainly one of the cases that moves me the most. It's an android I met at the Kodaiji temple in Kyoto last year. This android teaches Buddhist lessons, especially around the concept of emptiness, which in Buddhism is a door to liberation since you get rid of everything. To me, it was very important because it opened the possibility of a cyborg spirituality. It was really cool to talk with the monks, really old monks, and see that they were taking the android very seriously. It wasn't like a soulless machine speaking stuff. They considered this android as a valid speaker. To them, we humans and machines are capable of emptiness. And I found it very beautiful. If you go to Tokyo, go see this android. This is the most recent case I studied. It's about jinn or genies like Robin Williams genie. Well, of course, the origin of genies is not Disney. Jinns are a supernatural myth from the Arabic world. And that's a frame of one of my favorite films, Arabian Nights by Pier Paolo Pasolini. The main idea around jinns is that they are beings that live between the human and the otherworldly dimension. They can be in both worlds, and I connected this idea with the notion of interoperability that free software promoters advocate. For instance, I think it will be so cool to think about some deep interoperability. What about poetry and computer science, spirits and your phone? The belief in jinns is still very present in the Arabic world. For example, there are forums where you see that testimonies of jinns that supposedly took possession of computers and talked to you through some kind of chat. It's very appealing to think of a spirit taking possession of your machines. Maybe it has happened to you sometime, at some point in your life. But well, all of those were case studies, but I had to do something with all this information because while I'm a researcher, I consider myself an activist too, so I always try to have my output reach something more impactful. My option was to promote an exercise of speculative design. This started at the Internet Freedom Festival last year in Valencia, Spain, where with a group of technologists and activists, we developed advanced technology prototypes and used a methodology where we had like magical powers in one side and communities of our interest in the other, and made connections between the two, like what power this community might need. And with those crosses, we reached 4 prototypes of advanced technology. With this experience, I did a short film, that was screened in a couple of galleries in Rotterdam and Amsterdam. It's basically me reading a poem plus several interviews I did around the world. There's footage from my research trips, and there are the prototypes that we designed. It's also in this website if you want to watch it someday. I have the collaboration of my friend Andres Tapia. He's an industrial designer, and he actually designed the prototypes. We moved from the stage of having just an idea to have a material object. I'd like to share with you some bits of this short film. It starts with this guy in the Amazon Go store in San Francisco. He tries to explain how the store works. The idea is that it's a store with where you don't use cash or any form of payment, and it's weird because it's like it's supposed to be very smooth and easy, but everyone was super complicated trying to figure out how this worked. It felt really like one of this Internet of shit situation, but he was a cutie, and we started with this kind in this situation that we are right now. We're in the technology is working like this, weird. I'd like to share with you the part that Simone, he's an industrial designer from Italy, but he lives in Shanghai. But he lives in Shanghai. He's in this design studio. The name is Automato. He's super smart. I kind of had a crush on him. He's super, super smart. And he designs, look at him. And he designs with this really post-humanist vision in mind, where the human is not at the center. So let's see what Simone says. Hope this is going to sound.
What is it like? Why should you build something with boredom? And how do you do it? And so I think taking the point of view of the objects and of other things is actually really interesting to look at the future, because, and that's a bit the problem I think we had with design, and especially like user-centered design, that it only looks at the person as the center, but you sometimes lose the context. And so if you think about the future from the perspective of a Roomba or a cat or a river, what is it? And I think that's actually a lot more. It's something that we definitely have to look at for now. Like, how do you go beyond? In some ways, some people talk about. Of course, there is like beyond you as a person and you as a whatever, like white male. There is the whole like inclusion discussion. But I think there is also like the whole like beyond human discussion, and especially when you're talking about issues around technology and things that have agency in your life, you also need to think about what is that thing doing? What does it see? There was a very beautiful work like years ago from Timo Arnold from used to be at Berg, London, that he made a whole supercut of all point of views of cameras and how do cameras see the world. And so you start to see how there are all these different algorithms and different ways of determining what is what, and sometimes it's vectors, sometimes it's boxes, sometimes it's blobs. But if you don't understand how these things see or how these things, why they behave, then it's really hard to even have the discussion around what's the problem with AI, what's the problem with ethics in technology, unless you also see and look from the other perspective.
This is one of the prototypes that we designed. It's some sort of ship. Extremely appropriate for migration. Yeah, I guess so. We did that kind of. We took that approach to design, like think from the far end to the like the most extreme thing you can think, and then design from that rather than from the things you already have, is very speculative. It's not really super concrete, but we took like this opposite direction, and I liked it, and I think it can be very fruitful. So this is how we're reaching the end of my presentation. Maybe we can reflect a little about the impact of thinking this way. First, I think it could be important to use this magical thinking approach to switch the narratives we use to think when we think about tech, and switch those from profit to public interest. There's lots of research that reveal the bias in tech. For example, how many products, smart products, not really consider issues such as race or geographies from the global south. I think is connected to the idea of taking back the tech. That's a concept that cyber feminists use a lot. The idea of like, let's reappropriate technology and use it according to our own ethics and purposes. Third, I wrote scientific innovation has to be adventurous. I believe that is true, and it's important to be really reckless about it. It's not that I'm proposing that all of us have to become New Age or anti-vaxxers. Not at all. I do believe in science and in scientific innovation. And it's kind of weird. I was in California last week, and it's full of mystical stuff, psychics everywhere. Also the boom on astrology. It seems like there's a lot of people trying to find something somewhere else, and that can be problematic because it can lead to, I don't know, scams, stuff like that. But it's also a sign that there is an important group of people that is trying to think in a different paradigm than the one we are living in today. And I think as technologists have to, I don't know, get rid of our, I don't know, strictly concrete boundaries. Finally, I think that I have this conversation a lot, that we kind of think that the internet in the past was kind of more fun. We were it had this feeling that everything was possible. You were able to choose your own identity. Everything was anonymous, but that is not possible anymore. Now everything is super surveilled, is super controlled by a couple of corporations. And I think that a project like mine, and a project, this is not just me doing this kind of work in speculative design. There's a lot of people in Europe and South America working on this. And I think it's an attempt to fall in love with the internet again and not look at that as something, I don't know, that constrains you. My intuition is that we can achieve that by running away from the big internet corporations and becoming more creative, more adventurous, more reckless, more magical. And that's it. That was my talk. You can reach me at that email. Thank you.